Good evening, and welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. I'm Bob Delaney, Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies and Research. Labor Vision, a production of the Institute, focuses on topics of importance and interest to working Rhode Islanders. We hope you enjoy this evening's edition.
Thank you for joining us for this week's edition of Labor Vision, where we are trying regularly to engage the public in a discussion with our elected officials about important issues. And we're pleased this week to be joined with Representative Grace Diaz. Grace, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here and share this time with you and the public.
Terrific. You've represented your district, District 11 in Providence, since 2005. I know you were born and raised in the Dominican Republic before you came here to Rhode Island, and you actually got involved in politics in the Dominican Republic, is that right?
It's right, Jim. And I was in politics in one of the party that was in power, and I have opportunity to run for city council for the city of Santo Domingo, and I won the election, but when they placed my name in the ticket, it was too low in the bottom of the ticket, and I didn't have a chance to be elected. But I was one of the person who really involved in politics and with the president of Dominican Republic, with the mayor, and maybe that experience was something that really helped me to bring it to Rhode Island.
It certainly planted a seed for political involvement in the future. Why did you come to Rhode Island, and why did you come to America from the Dominican Republic?
I'm one of the typical immigrant. I have, in that time, 4 children, 3 boys and 1 girl. Because I was working for the president, Jorge Blanco, he lost the election. In country like Dominican Republic, when you empower and your president is no longer president, you also lose your job. Mm-hmm. And because the need of provide for my family helped me to, or push me to decide to come to the United States. And the only place I have a friend was Providence. And this is why I didn't choose New York like most of the Dominicans go to New York. But the only place in the United States I have a friend was in Providence. And they helped me to at least to have the first step in the city of Providence. And since then, I'm in love with Rhode Island.
Yeah. So how long have you been in Rhode Island?
I celebrate my 20 years last 2010, April 4. And at the beginning, I was going in and out to Dominican Republic until I get married here and is stable and established my family. I brought my children in 1995. My first year were very, very difficult because I had to support myself and also send money to Dominican Republic while I was doing and waiting for my children here. It was extremely stressful and sad years, but finally when they came, I had my house, I was working for the state. I did a lot of great things that sometimes immigrants, when they're working hard, can have it done.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And we wanted you on the show to talk about a couple of different legislative issues that are important to all of us, but to the immigrant community in particular. And that's why I think having a sense on where you came from and how you've been doing is important. So before we talk about the E-Verify legislation, which is the first item I want to talk to you about, why don't you just tell the viewers what you did to support yourself when you first came out here, and then explain how you first got involved in politics.
Like I said before, I came here 20 years ago, and amazing to me that I is still living in the same neighborhood. I was living 2 streets from my house, Sumter Street, and now I'm in Adelaide Avenue. And the first job I had was beer bartender. And can you imagine working for the president and come here and work as a bartender? Mm-hmm. Like a lot of immigrants, they have to work no matter what to support themselves. And those years were very difficult. But finally, I was able to visualize that education was a key of everything. And even though English is my second language, my first time I took English class was by the International Institute.
Sure.
I remember October 31, I believe, was in the Trinity Church, Elmwood and Broad Street. And Denise was my teacher. It was like English adult class to teach you how to do things. And from there, I went to CCRI. I took class to become a nursing assistant. I worked for the ASME, under the ASME union for a couple of years, and continue, you know.
Were you a certified nursing assistant? Were you a CNA?
Yes, I was a certified nursing assistant for 14 years. And because the training, I applied to work for the state. My first job with the state was with the veteran homes in Marathon Avenue. And then from there, I moved to the mental health hospital in Cranston and worked for them around 8 years. And because I brought my children, and I was a single parent, I had to work weekends, I had to work during the day. I saw the necessity, the need to bring my mother with me. And finally, she came to help me and help me to raise my children my first year when they came here. And after I brought my mother, I became citizen of the United States, and I decided to open a business. And the business would give me two things. One, freedom, and be able to be at home with 4 teenagers that I had to keep my eyes on it. And the second benefit was help my mother to have a place to work. And then I opened my home child care business that I did for around 5 years.
And you ran the home care business right out of your own home, and you employed your mother, and were able to keep it all in the family, as they say.
And it was wonderful. I have the opportunity to know Union 1199, who become my advisor, my mentors, and they teach me how to do outreach in the community and connect with other home child care providers who need maybe friendship, just to know somebody who was doing the same business. And from there, we started educating them, involved in the politics. With the Union 1199, I did my first step in politics.
Okay.
And my first time when I went to the State House was amazing, you know?
Was that the legislative issue where they were trying to get the employer of record so you all could form a union and bargain over wages and benefits?
It was part, but at the beginning it was just to be recognized with dignity, because home child care providers are not babysitters. They are home child care providers, professional. And at the beginning, we tried to educate the public, the politicians, about the importance of our job. And then we saw the importance to be considered a state employee. And then the union involved and educate the providers and involve the providers in the process. And we learned the importance of being in politics and help other elected officials to get elected.
So when you get involved in the union helped you get involved in politics. Now, did you have some success when you were working with your fellow home care providers in the political arena, in the legislative arena?
I think we did, Jim, because we accomplished so many things. One of the things is we proved the political power. We proved the Rhode Islanders that we able to involve in politics and help candidates to win election, and help me to win election. It was amazing because nobody knew me. Nobody had idea that was a lady the name Grace Diaz out there working with providers. But the union decided to have one who can represent each one of the home child care providers. And that's why I accepted the responsibility, and we engaged so many ladies to work in campaign. In 3 months, after we started the campaign, we won the election by 52%. It was amazing. That changed my life from that day on, and it's still on, changing my life.
Okay. It sounds like education was very important on all these different steps that you've taken along your very interesting and diverse career. And we'll talk about a few legislative education issues. But first, why don't we talk about probably what's the most high-profile issue as far as legislation in the immigrant community, and that's the existence of E-Verify and what E-Verify is going to be used for. Let me start just by noting that E-Verify is a program that is supposed to check data from a prospective employee against a federal database that the Homeland Security runs in conjunction with the Social Security Administration. The employers don't have to pay for it. By and large, it's voluntary, but there are some instances out there in the country where it's actually mandatory, and I know that's one of the legislative issues that we've been grappling with here in Rhode Island. E-Verify's been around for a long time. I was surprised to learn that it's been around since 1997. I know that the Homeland Security claims that they have maybe an 8% error rate. Now, I imagine any error would be important because it would impair your ability to get a job. But let me start by asking you, what are you hearing about error rates in E-Verify from your community? Well,
the biggest one I heard is the fear, because the E-Verify also give the state police the power to asking people about immigration and documentation status. And just there, even though people can be totally legal in Providence, sometimes we have fears that somebody can just stop you, asking you for documents that you don't carry with you. But just because you don't carry it with you, you can be arrested or you can be pulled into the car. And that is one of the biggest concerns in the community, because just because you look like Latino people or like any other minority, you can be misinterpreted that you're not doing things right, excuse me. But this is one of the biggest things I'm facing every time, that E-Verify only brings stress to the community, because any business which decide to use the E-Verify, they can do freely, they can go and do it. But when you mandate every business in Rhode Island has to use it, it's a different thing. And that is something, this is why I decided not to support any action or any intention to support E-Verify. And I was so happy when Governor Chafee decided to eradicate the E-Verify in the state of Rhode Island.
Sure. Before we talk about what Governor Chafee did, just to put it in context, previously, our previous governor, Don Carcieri, had issued an executive order that did a couple of different things. You talked about the interaction with the law enforcement as being an important issue. But what Governor Carcieri also did was require that any business that wants to be a contractor with the state of Rhode Island would have to use E-Verify. So instead of it being a voluntary system that most private employers use around the country, in Rhode Island for a period of time, the governor was mandating that contractors use E-Verify. Did you have an initial reaction once that executive order came out from Don Carcieri?
Oh yes, I remember the day, because it was in the afternoon when I had my phone ringing a lot, and I realized that many people were arrested, and the community went to downtown immigration office to do some kind of rally against the decision. And I remember people crying. I remember people very stressed, and I was there. Mm-hmm. It was the first day when Governor Donna Carcieri signed the law. And it brought a lot of concern and a lot of reaction. And the friendly relationship with the community and governor get into more difficult feelings, because people feel like governor was doing something just to impose situation, make family stressful and suffer. And that day was very difficult, Jim. I was there in immigration, tried to be between the community who was protesting and the law enforcement officers that tried to contain all those people outside. And finally, I am very thankful that I was able to speak with the police officer there. They allowed me to get into the building, speak with the officer in charge. He told me everybody was fine, and then I can bring the message to the people outside, and they have opportunity to come down. For that moment on, I knew how important was be involved with the E-Verify situation in the state, and be sure that in some point we able to eliminate that difficult executive order.
Did people in your community feel that it's harder to get a job if E-Verify was mandatory, if all employers had to use E-Verify, or at least in this case, employers that were going to contract with the state of Rhode Island use E-Verify?
Yes, it is, Jim. It is because, as you mentioned before, that system is not perfect. It's not a system that somebody go, apply for a job, and then they can feel comfortable or confident that the results of E-Verify will be in their favor. Any mistake on people who, when they change name because they get married, or because there's any error in the number of the Social Security, or any situation that can delay the process, can impact in the chance to get a job. With the high job unemployment rate that we have in Rhode Island, when you make it more difficult for people to get a job, it's devastating for poor community, similar to one I'm representing.
Mm-hmm. After the governor came out with his executive order, it was in place for a period of time. Did you hear evidence? Did you hear stories about people losing their jobs because of Donald Carceri's executive order, at least in the immigrant community?
I never heard anything about somebody lose job, but I heard people who applied for job and the job was denied because the people maybe stereotype the person who was applied, or because the person tried to explain why their name was different, or what any change in the document. I heard many stories about people who feel very frustrated because they apply and they never have any answer, and they feel like E-Verify has a lot to do with that.
Who opposed the E-Verify executive order? Were all the people who opposed it from the Latino community here in Rhode Island, or were there others who were involved in the issue as well?
I don't have a name in my mind, but it is an excellent question, because when we're talking about E-Verify, we're talking about immigration, we only think in Latinos, like it's the only ethnic group that is affected, but I heard many stories about Liberian, Nigerian, also people from Brazil, and people who not necessarily show dark skin color, they also affected. Regular American citizens also, because when people drive, like go to church or do normal things daily, and be stopped by the police and asking for a document that you never carry with you, that really inconvenient people. And I heard many people testify in the State House about their own experience, and those were not necessarily Latinos.
I'm just mindful of that issue because, myself, like a lot of people here in Rhode Island, we had grandparents come. My grandparents spoke French and the other set spoke Italian. So they all moved to America without knowing the language. For a period of time, there was no such thing as an illegal immigrant, because before the 1920s, there was no check. They just wanted to make sure you were healthy and that you'd have a job when you came here. So this whole issue of illegality wasn't even true for a lot of the people who are here now but aren't viewed as immigrants anymore, even though we're grandchildren and great-grandchildren of immigrants.
I feel like the history is repeating. Before I was another group, ethnic group, now it's the turn for the Latinos, and we are experiencing the same thing that in the past that you just mentioned. And I believe as years pass by, the anti-immigrant feelings that we see in different states in the United States and sometime in Rhode Island finally we be, calm down and things will be better, because we are human beings like anybody else. Why we need to concentrate in some part of aspect of the relation between two humans when we can concentrate our energy in better things? And hopefully the experience we live, because I consider myself one of them. I'm the first immigrant generation from my side here in the United States, and I know the experience by personal experience, and I'm representing one of the districts which has more diversity in the entire state. And because of that, I feel connected with my district, and also I feel responsible for representing all the issues they are concerned.
When we had our election last November, the different candidates took positions on different issues. And one of the issues that Link Chafee embraced was a promise that he made that he was going to rescind Donald Carceri's executive order as it related to E-Verify and immigration upon getting elected governor. Was that an important issue for you and your community during the gubernatorial campaign last fall?
It was very important issue, and in two sense. To me, I was a politician in DR, and I am one here. I don't want to name myself politician, but I am. But one important aspect as a human and as a politician is when you promise, you accomplish what you promise. And one thing I have so much credit and admiration for Governor Chafee is that he's the person who, during the politics process, the campaign, he promised something. And just after he got elected and be in office, he accomplished what he promised. And to me, I have so much respect for him. And during the campaign, I have opportunity to hear what he was saying about immigration issues, E-Verify, undocumented students. And I see how little by little his accomplishment, all the promise he made. And I feel happy about that, because when we have a governor who is able to see things beyond to other people, is amazing. And I'm very pleased that eventually he will finish to accomplish all the promise he made.
Was Link Chafee, as a candidate, the only gubernatorial candidate who weighed in on the E-Verify issue in such a high-profile way?
And also, Jim, he was the only one talking about immigration when nobody asked him about it. Mm-hmm. And that way, he was amazing, unique. And I remember that because while other candidates were avoiding those questions, he brought out those questions. And that tells you a lot about him. Yes,
it absolutely certainly does. In addition to the executive order, there's been a debate within the State House, or at least a pretty high-profile debate in the last 3 years, on E-Verify legislation. There have been a couple of different senators and representatives who've put in legislation primarily on the issue of whether or not employers ought to be required to use E-Verify here in Rhode Island. And I understand that over the last couple of years, that bill has actually come out of the House of Representatives, out of your chamber, the chamber where you serve, but it hasn't come out of the Senate side yet. First of all, the House is a small body. There's 75 of you. So you know the bill sponsors of the people putting in the E-Verify legislation. Give us a sense on what that is like. What kind of conversations have you had with Representative John Breen and some others who've been pushing that other kind of agenda as it relates to immigration issues?
First of all, we respect each other very well. And even though he knows that I will be testifying against his bill, he knows my position. He respects my position as well. I respect him. What is make unique the General Assembly is that each one of the members bring their own perspective about issues. They have their own responsibility to represent their community, and I respect that as well. I expecting they respect my position, but it's a coincidence that we're sitting almost next to each other, and when he's in the process to debate his position about E-Verify, he's so intense and he has so much passion as well I do. And after that, we laugh and talk each other because that is our job. He's represent what he believes is the right thing, and I do represent what I believe is right. And I believe we don't need to have E-Verify in Rhode Island. E-Verify can be optional. And that is why I introduced similar legislation that Breen introduced, but mine is optional. The business have the opportunity to choose to be in E-Verify programs if they decide to do that. That is the only one moment on time when we have that kind of difference and position we have. But in general, we get along well. We don't have any problem.
Good. That's good. That's reassuring that you can have a civil discourse even if you're on completely different sides of what's a high-profile and passionate issue. So that is reassuring that our political process here in Rhode Island can handle a diversity of opinion, yet people can still come together and work together.
And the public can see sometimes, Jim, that we are so passionate and say something, and later we are laughing, you know? And it's not taking credit of the importance of those issues, but it's just demonstrated that we know our role, but we respect each other inside the house.
Okay. Now, I know when I took a look at the votes for the last couple of years, it looks like it's that E-Verify legislation has passed, but by a smaller margin last year compared to the prior 2 years. And I know you can't really predict, you know, what may happen this year should it come to the floor again. We have a new set of representatives in that chamber. What's your sense on whether or not you know, E-Verify is going to pass easily, or if it's might be more difficult to get it passed this year based on, you know, who's been elected and who didn't return from the last session? Give us a political sense on that, if you can, knowing it's just a prediction, and I won't hold you to any of it.
Thank you, Jim. But it's hard to predict that because the legislation process is long and involves the House of Representatives and the Senate. And like you say, we have new members. And when the tough vote comes to us, will be the true moment when you realize what position each one has in the House. Like you say, the vote was so close before, and get out of the House.
I believe it was 5 votes, I think.
Yes.
5-vote margin
Get
last year.
out of the House, but when it's my personal experience, when we see it's difficult to stop something in the House, we go to the Senate and then try to do something there. And we are working coordinated effort between some state rep and senators. And my great Senator Juan Picharo was able to help us on the other side. And that helped us to stop the process, because it's not just passing the House, it has to be a coordination effort between both chambers. And this year, I would say we will fight again, and we have we have wonderful governor this time, and his position will be influenced in the members of the House of Representatives. Remember, last year, I can say that the governor cashier was just waiting to see the bill passed to sign it. This year, I believe Governor Chafee will just waiting to veto. And that is the big difference we have. And then with that background, I believe we have a chance to stop it again this year.
That really is a game changer, because now you're not looking at a majority vote out of the House, but you need to get a margin wide enough to overcome a veto, and that's a whole different number altogether, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and good feeling too.
It's well known and understood that certain folks in the immigrant community would be opposed to E-Verify. Who else, if anyone, opposes E-Verify? You know, what have you heard during the debate about other folks other than the immigrants themselves who have some objection to this whole process? I
heard the church, some church get involved, and when church get involved, it's a great support, and you know, to bring it to the General Assembly and also to show that it's not just only the Latino or the minority community who pushing against the E-Verify, but also we see any kind of ethnic background residents from the state to supporting the union. Some of the unions also get involved in the process, and I see that we have so big range of supporters now behind the E-Verify to try to stop the E-Verify.
At its core, E-Verify isn't so much about immigrants as it is about requiring businesses to do something that they don't have to do today. Did the business community weigh in in a cohesive, unified voice, either for or against E-Verify, as it's been debated the last 3 years?
I love that question because Broad Street has so many small business, barbershop, what we call in bodega, that is a little market, and so many other small businesses, and many of them, they don't have a computer. And the E-Verify system requires that you have ability to check in the computer, to have a program for your computer in order to check the document the person presented to you. And that is an issue for many business. And that is one of the things they rose in front of me, like it's difficult for us to, on top of paying some money to get the connection with the E-Verify, also to have ability to have somebody to check, have the computer, and for a small business, it's a little bit challenge.
So if I understand this correctly, it's not just the immigrant community, but it's also some churches and unions and businesses that also have some objection about the requirement that businesses use E-Verify.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Immigration is a thorny issue sometimes, and I've heard a lot of people say that you can't really fix it on a local level or even a statewide level, that there needs to be some kind of federal fix of the immigration issue. And I imagine, you know, as a citizen, you would appreciate the importance of a country being able to control its borders and have some control over, you know, who comes and who stays. What do you think the federal government needs to do to resolve this issue of immigration and the legality or illegality of the status of the people who are here right now?
Well, I think facing the issue, try to resolve, is a long process, or is not done anything for a long time. I put it that way. And because we are not, at the federal level, is not able to fix it for a long time, the problem gets so tangled, it's so complicated. Can you imagine, Jim, if the government were able in the past to take the step and resolve the problem, where we can be right now? I believe the United States need to take care of the borders. It's very important because it's not just about immigration. It's about life trafficking. It's a lot about criminal activity. It's a lot about a lot of stuff. But the government has to really stop and say, let's take care of that. And everybody will benefit, because when the government will take the step to fix the immigration issue, and then the countries that usually immigrants come to the United States, they have to take some step to fix their own issue, how to address the life of the residents in those countries, to have a better opportunity for job, better opportunity to support themselves. But until the United States don't take the step to fix the border, seriously fix the immigration issue, we will continue talking, and nothing will be done. And I'm dreaming to see in my lifetime when we have a set of rules that benefit the United States, but also taking in consideration other countries around the United States, how the interaction between the United States and Mexico, Central America, Caribbean can be a helpful relationship that really eliminate all those great feelings that have many of those individuals to come to the United States. We need to be creative. And the United States has the ability to become the nation, to have the ability to create some system to help other country and help themselves to stop the immigration issue. Like Europe have a wonderful policy that when you go to Europe, you have opportunity to be there 3 months, but after that, somebody will be looking for you. And we need to create some kind of system that give it confidence for people who come here, but also give it confidence for who live in the United States already.
That makes a perfectly good sense. Thank you for that. Now I'd like to switch gears and talk about a couple of different education issues, because you serve on the House HEW, the Health, Education, and Welfare Committee. You've been involved in a lot of different education issues in your time up at the Assembly, but there are a couple that have some particular importance to the immigrant community. And the first I wanted to talk about was legislation that you've worked on related to how much money students pay for tuition if they've graduated from a high school here in Rhode Island. I know there's not identical but comparable federal legislation, but why don't we start, if you could explain to the viewers what your bill does and why you introduced it.
Thank you, Jim. For 7 years, I introduced an opportunity for a student who graduate in Rhode Island continue to college education, regardless of immigration or not. I believe every student who go through the process of graduate from high school need to continue higher education. If we allow every single student in the state of Rhode Island to do that, we win. And we win because we have a generation of educated individuals who we serve and become a taxpayer. What my bill does is to describe the way how students, undocumented students, can pay in-state tuition in the state of Rhode Island. Maybe you know, or maybe our listeners, they know that when the students don't have a documentation because they are still in the process of immigration, they have to be considered as a out-of-state tuition, as a students out of the state. And they pay 3 times the tuition that regular residents in the state. What my bill says is, if you live in Rhode Island, you attending high school and you graduated, you are entitled to pay the regular tuition that other state. I give you an example. If somebody want to go to CCRI, that is the community college that most people can afford to go, they have to, regular student pay $3,080. If you are considering out of the state students, you will pay 3 times that tuition. That is around $8,712. $8,712, excuse me.
I know the difference in payment is equally dramatic at Rhode Island College and URI as well, where it's about $10,000 a year more to attend RIC if you're charged out-of-state tuition versus in-state tuition. And I was stunned to learn that it's $17,000 more to attend URI if you're paying out-of-state tuition compared to in-state tuition. That's a dramatic change that people who live in Rhode Island, attend Rhode Island public schools, graduate from a Rhode Island high school would have to pay because they don't have the right documentation on their immigration status. And
I love that you mentioned immigration federal law before, because I know personally many families who came here and they are still waiting for 10, 15 years to see when the process will be done. And I heard those experiences from a student who go to school and they find out last year of the high school that they not qualify for regular tuition. And it's devastating for them. And why we penalize a student when they're not responsible for parents' actions? They just came to the United States, they love the country, they live here, and all life change when they find out that they're not allowed to continue higher education. And I would love to change that. And those students will never take any place for another residence in Rhode Island. It's only, Jim, $100 and $150 a year of those students who stay back and they're not able to continue school. If you divide 150 between 4 or 3 public colleges that we have, it's around 40 students for each one. That is not significant. And also, those students will never be able to apply for financial aid, scholarship, or any tax money. And this is why sometimes I don't understand why we cannot help those students to continue higher education when they can pay from their own money.
This bill wouldn't cost the state anything. There's no expense from the state treasury if this bill passed, is there?
No. The bill will help the college get more revenue through the direct payment, cash payment from parents, and also help those parents to feel happy that the students, their children, can continue higher education. And another good thing about that, Jim, is the state, local, state, and federal pay elementary, middle school, and high school. And now those students can pay back to the state. And it's different than other regular students who apply for financial aid, the scholarship, the state will continue to pay for their education. While those students, they can afford, they can make a contribution to their own education.
Can someone attend school elsewhere in another state or another country and come to Rhode Island, you know, in May, attend high school for 1 month? Would that qualify someone for in-state tuition, or do you have to be here for a period of time in order to be eligible for this provision?
The bill is very clear that the only student who qualify is those who are attending Rhode Island High School after be there for 3 years.
3 full years.
3 years. And we make the bill 3 years because one of the concerns from the opposition was exactly what you described, that somebody come from another state or come from out of the country and try to take advantage. And if you see how people can be considered residents of the Rhode Island is after they live 2 years. And we increased the qualification of the undocumented student bill to 3 years to make it more difficult for the students and make sure the opposition understand that we're not looking to open the door for residents from Connecticut, Boston, or other area. You have to live here.
Do you believe that there are people who would be attending college and paying state tuition if this bill passed, but because the out-of-state tuition is so expensive, they're just not pursuing higher education at all? Are those dollars not coming to Rhode Island public schools because we've made it so expensive for undocumented high school graduates to pay in-state tuition?
Yes, it is, Jim. And I don't know if you remember one article in the newspapers to say a couple of years ago that the college registration was low, they need more students. And that year I was thinking, wow, those seats are open, and we have many students who want to pay, but they not allowed to do that. And I know personal few students who have the same experience. They want to pay, but they have the money, but they're not able to do it because it's impossible to pay $24,000 for 1 semester in URI. And while other people pay $8,000. And it's impossible for a low-income family, and that is one of the group that my bill target.
I could see why your bill would be good for this 150 students and their families by making it more affordable to pursue higher education. But why is your bill good for the state?
Oh, in so many ways. One is the state don't make any investment to those students. Secondly, is those individuals, eventually they will become totally legal in Rhode Island. And when that happens, could be in the middle of the time when they are in the school, could be after they're done, but they will be educated individuals who eventually they will work, pay taxes, and make significant contribution to Rhode Island. And that is the biggest benefit that the state of Rhode Island will have. I prefer to have very educated, undocumented person than have an undocumented, no educated person. It's always education, the best investment that we can do.
It sure is, and it's terrific economic development. And I'm mindful of Link Chafee's speech when he got inaugurated, where he talked about there being positive value in a couple of different things that he wanted to do, including, you know, eliminating E-Verify. Do you think that if Rhode Island was showing itself to be more amenable for immigrants to live and to work, that would be good for economic development here in the state of Rhode Island? Is it good for our economy to pass bills like this dealing with higher ed tuition? Is it good for our economy to not require businesses to use E-Verify, for example?
I think it is. It's making Rhode Island more friendly for business, a small business. It's making Rhode Island back to the root. When Roger Williams came to this part of the land, he also brought with him the spirit of diversity, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. And when Governor Chafee was swearing in, I was so excited and so happy to hear how he mentioned the importance of diversity, the importance of respect each other. And he brought to the state now the same reason why Roger Williams was able to come to this part of the land and establish this beautiful state. And I believe he will looking to we have a different atmosphere. And already we have a little bit more or some kind of difference before and now. And I'm very pleased and happy to see how things changing little bit by little bit. And just to be very thankful, I want to remember that one day after he was sworn in, he signed the executive order to revocate the E-Verify. And that's a beautiful beginning. And I'm pleased to continue to see how we can move forward.
Good. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time left, but we do have a few minutes. And if you could just quickly run through one final issue, which is work that you've been doing for years now to address the age of school attendance. Right now, if you're 16 years old, you can drop out of high school. I think everyone agrees that that's probably not a good thing, but you've actually worked on legislation to raise the age of attendance to 18. So if you could just take a few minutes and describe what the bill does and why it's important to you.
One of the things move a lot of state legislators in the House is their own experience. And one of the sad experiences I have in life was to see my daughter to drop school when she was 16. 16
years old, and your
Yes.
own daughter dropped out.
And that experience made me realize the importance to try to convince your child to stay in the school, but also to work with the system to try to keep the students in the school. And when I was elected, it was one of my issues that I carried with me to the State House, and I started working around it. And finally, I had the pleasure to work with Chairman McNamara. He's the chair of the House Committee on Health, Education, and Welfare. And after we partnered together to work in that issue, he was able to bring the Department of School, the Higher Education Board, and so many professionals in our state to address that important issue. And finally, I see the great possibility that we can keep the students in the school up to 18. And by doing that, we will be reducing the dropout rate that is still very high in our state. And hopefully, I will see the great opportunity to maintain those students in the school. Now, after my daughter have child responsibility, she realized all my advice. She realized the importance of school, but I don't want to see any kids in our state to realize that when they are adult. I wanted to be able to offer a great opportunity to them through programs, as is described in the bill, to maintain those students in the school, and they will not able to drop a school until they are 19 or 20.
It's terrific that you're able to turn this personal situation that was a sad one for you into something that could be a positive for all of Rhode Island if we could obtain this. Let me just ask you one question. Are schools equipped to educate kids who are 17 who really don't want to be there?
Well, one of the part of our bill is we will find a student who will say, no, I don't want to be in the school. But before we drop them out, before they leave, they have to sign a contract, some kind of contract where they say, well, are we able to finish the GED or go to a special program? But they have to sign a contract with a school district that they are belong to be sure that they are responsible to finish the high school education. If they decided to do a different path, but we not let them go out of the school, we have to be sure they are 18 or they sign some kind of programs to continue higher education. We want all the children in Rhode Island educate.
That's terrific. I wish we had more time to talk about that issue too. Perhaps we'll have you come back on the show to talk about some of these education issues some more. Grace Diaz, representative from Providence, thank you very much for being so generous of your time and energy and effort in talking to our viewers today about a couple of really high-profile and important issues. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Jim, and it was my pleasure, and I hope I can come back again and talking about the progress of those bills.
Thank you for joining us for this evening's edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments. Labor Vision can be seen 3 times each week here on Channel 14. Join us on Tuesdays at 7 p.m., Thursdays at 8 p.m., and Saturdays at 5 p.m. For nearly 30 years, the Institute for Labor Studies and Research has been growing unions and building futures. Since it first opened its doors on 15 Jefferson Street near the State House, the Institute has offered education and training programs to more than 125,000 working Rhode Islanders. In a rapidly changing economy, employers need a workforce that's able to adapt to change. The Institute is committed to offering programs that provide our students with the skills to meet the demands of this new economy. Our programs range from Worksite English as a second language and GED classes, Worksite Spanish targeted to more than 22 specific industries and professions, customized computer training ranging from beginner to advanced, national certification preparation classes in water distribution, and a host of other offerings designed to make program participants more effective at their jobs.
Becoming proficient in English is going to help them progress in the union, in life in general.
3 decades has been working hand over fist to try and bring education and knowledge to ordinary working people, regardless of where they work.
To be able to do it at work takes a great burden off people, and the Institute provided the classes, provided wonderful teachers that understood where people were coming from.
Absolutely incredible the way she worked with the students. And she geared the whole curriculum around health and safety. Not only general health and safety, but she also took part of my curriculum that they need to have. We have to have 144 hours a year, and she utilized that and made it part of her curriculum.
Most recently, we have announced our partnership with the National Labor College in Silver Spring, Maryland, and the establishment here at the Institute of the Edward J. McElroy Satellite of the National Labor College to service members of organized labor throughout New England.
we can accredit apprenticeship training and couple those experiences and courses done in labor education.
Be able to actually have our kids go through school and actually qualify with our credits we get for the apprentice program.
So individuals now here in Rhode Island can get a bachelor's degree in labor studies right here in Rhode Island at the Institute.
I see people going on from simply taking a course here to going to the community college to get maybe a 4-year bachelor's degree while they're still working. And every once in a while, somebody comes down to URI and gets a master's degree in labor and industrial relations. That's what the labor movement's about, moving people up and forward.
The Institute has always considered education of union stewards and labor leaders to be one of its primary functions, and as such, has created an extensive list of course offerings such as basic and advanced steward training, labor relations and employment law, lobbying and political action, effective communication, negotiations and grievance training, and workplace health and safety.
I was fortunate enough to take some Spanish classes there, along with some postal workers. There were some laborers there, some teachers, and that was very helpful for my training in organizing.
The Institute has provided customized training for us for our building delegates who are known as shop stewards out there in the other world.
The benefit of having relationships with the unionized construction industry because of our substantial investments in things such as apprenticeship and training.
They need it for personal development, but more importantly, if the labor movement is to regain its vitality and to regain its strength, we need a level playing field.
We're very excited about our own Union Steward Seminar, which is coming up in a couple of months, and the Institute for Labor Studies is going to put the training on for us. That's one of the things that they do. They're always here to help labor.
Our Leadership for a Future program provides a leadership training environment for emerging and established leaders from community groups, labor unions, and religious community. Leadership for a Future also provides an opportunity for leaders from diverse groups and backgrounds to forge relationships and networks that will benefit themselves and their organizations through their lives.
What initially attracted me to the program was some of our leaders with the laborers. They had had discussions with people at the Rhode Island AFL-CIO, and it was impressed upon me that this was a very important program, a new program that had a lot to offer, which happened to be the case.
When you look at Leadership for a Future, I mean, that says it all right there, is that, you know, in Rhode Island, we need leaders to step up to make us stronger in the future, and I wanted to learn how to be a part of that.
The leaders of the labor movement in Rhode Island are going to come from individuals who take courses in leadership and development here at the Institute.
If you want to learn from a group of faculty who will help you do the best you can and build all the skills you need to be a really effective community advocate, Leadership for a Future is the program for you.
The Institute for Labor Studies and Research has produced Labor Vision continuously since 1986. It is the only television show dedicated exclusively to covering issues that concern Rhode Islanders and their families. In addition to the regular coverage of a range of topics, Labor Vision each month chooses a current issue to explore in depth. Labor Vision interviews people on the street, on the job, and at conferences and meetings about the issues that matter to them. Each month, experts and community leaders come together to form a panel to discuss a timely issue.
In that program, we have interviews with people who are newsmakers in the labor community, maybe people who are sympathetic to ordinary working people, even if they're not in a union. We present rallies and demonstrations, discussions of important points of order.
And we're very grateful to have that opportunity to be able to reach out and let the world know what we think is important for their children and what's important for education.
It's our thing, it talks about us, it speaks truth to power. We're the stars, in the TV shows that come on Labor Vision. And it talks about all the good work that, that the Institute cares about and the labor movement cares about.
Employee Free Choice Act. Everybody's standard of living improves.
Where people are actually compensated.
People can earn enough.
And not have to go through that fight and that intimidation and that fear.
The worst employer in the world.
Elvis Figueroa.
Fired.
A Marshall Plan for the economy.
It requires a first contract. It requires mediation. If you can't reach a first contract within a year.
It'll help the labor movement.
It's going to inhibit a lot of these employers from saying, I'm just going to fire 3 guys and we can just stop this right here.
What this act is going to do is put the choice into the hands of the workers.
We could get Congress to pass this. This is the right thing. Let's do something right for once.
The Institute for Labor Studies and Research has trained more than 125,000 members of organized labor and working Rhode Islanders. We're very proud of that accomplishment, and we look to 125,000 more in the next 30 years.
Together, we'll build something that people 30 years from now will look back on and pay honor to as well.
It is very important that the Institute continue to thrive and to grow.
By building up the labor movement through these instrumentalities, we've been able to build these people into better citizens.
That's major in growing the union.
Which everyone knows nowadays is more important than ever. So, I mean, they've been a valuable resource.
It's a key instrument in strengthening the labor movement and revitalizing the labor movement.
So it's our responsibility not only to raise the resources, but to explain to people how this really sews together the fabric of a decent life for our members, for people who are not our members, for people generally in the state of Rhode Island.
When you support the Institute for Labor Studies, you support the labor movement in Rhode Island.